video is about the Aristotle reading as well as the Atlantic article that we are assigned to read for week 13 entitled What Makes Us Happy. And, this week or this past week, we were talking about meaning in life. How does one find meaning in life? Is there a meaning? Can you create meaning? Um, and as we saw, Richard Taylor seemed to identify meaning with just being engaged with what you're doing, no matter what it is. While Wolf argued that you have to be engaged in projects that are objectively worthwhile, worth pursuing. And one question I asked you all on the discussion board is whether, a morally bad person could have a meaningful life. And on the Taylor view, it seems like the answer could be yes, because, let's say somebody really enjoys torturing possums. It seems like, well, if that's what they are getting a lot out of, then their life is meaningful to them. Whereas it seems like Wolf would say, no, no such life could be meaningful. And so, one thing we might think is that, a meaningful life is one that is both morally good and uh, makes a person happy. And that's exactly what Aristotle argues, which is by cultivating human virtues, essentially good, morally good habits, a person can become happy um, when they do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. And the ancient Greek conception of happiness, the Platonic Aristotelian conception, has a lot to do with psychological well-being. That's what they're concerned with. If we think about a person who's doing the right thing, they're not going to have psychological turmoil. They're not going to be filled with regret or shame. Instead, they're going to have psychological well-being, and that also helps them weather the tribulations of life. Now, Aristotle does say that a person who, no matter how virtuous, if they just go through complete tragedy, is not going to be happy. If your house burns down, your whole family dies, you don't have any friends, you go broke, no matter how morally upstanding you are, Aristotle seems to think, well, you can't overcome all adverse circumstances. And he says a little bit about that in our reading. But he thinks when you are virtuous, you are better able to weather adversity in life and come out the other end with a well-balanced psychological well-being. So that if that's true, that would be a good reason to seek virtue in order to have psychological well-being and to die having know you've lived a good life and you're content. Um, so that's sort of just a brief overview of Aristotle. I think the crash course video does a good job explaining his arguments, and also that interactive essay, I think, does a nice job explaining some key terms. So make use of those resources. Then you have the Atlantic article, which I think is super fascinating, which a long-term study done by psychologists of what are the qualities that seem to lead to a happy life. What makes people's lives go well, in the sense that they deem themselves happy. They don't commit suicide. In this Atlantic article, you see they follow, I think, 250 individuals or 400. I think it's 250 individuals from Harvard in the 1940s, and actually a good, surprising number of the people they follow actually either die young or their lives end in suicide or they have broken lives. What differentiates those people from the people who rate their own contentment very highly towards the end of their life? And the author identifies key features of happiness. And he doesn't say much about virtue, although perhaps these features make people virtuous. So the leader of the study is George Valent, and he sort of identifies these 7 features that seem to make people's lives go well. But I wonder if some of the features overlap with elements that Aristotle identifies as well. So I want you all to think about that. And, we can think about, what the study is focusing on is subjective ratings of well-being. And I think it's interesting that people sort of construct their life stories and how they do so. And actually, that has a lot to do with happiness. And perhaps construing yourself as a good, upstanding person helps contribute to your happiness. Um, so I think the Atlantic article is fairly straightforward in terms of understanding, but I think the more difficult question I'm asking you all to engage in is how do you see that article interacting with the Aristotelian piece? Is that study in some sort of sense supporting what Aristotle says? Is it conflicting with it? How do you interpret it in relation to what Aristotle says about happiness? I'm interested to see what people have to say about that. Again, I'm trying to keep my videos short, so I'll just end right there. I look forward to reading what people have to say about these readings for this week and their reactions.